A professional boxing event due to take place at Rushcliffe Leisure Centre on May the 7th has been cancelled after police received reports of a possible threat of violence.
Spectacularly, this is the news that the nation has once again been thrilled by the opportunity to participate in local elections like a heroic gladiatorial bloodbath, but with the added aroma of freshly sharpened tiny pencils. Across the country, people have been voting for their local councillors in order to decide who they want to have the privilege of closing down their libraries in 6 months' time. In Scotland, 16 and 17-year-olds have been voting for the first time. Previously, they've had to persuade an older teenager to go into the polling station and vote for them. There have been concerns that there will be a low turnout for the Police and Crime Commissioners elections, simply on the ground that there's been no advertising for them. Nobody knows who's standing, what they stand for, or what a Police and Crime Commissioner actually is. I assume it's the person who sends out the bat signal. So this is the news that the new Mayor of London is Claudio Ranieri. Verbally, this is the decision of Ted Cruz and John Kasich to suspend their campaigning against Donald Trump for what they describe as the Republican presidential nomination, but to all outside observers looks more like a hotly contested race to be judged the most appalling man in the world. I know a lot of Radio 4 listeners won't have been keeping up with the American politics, so I'll just quickly bring you up to speed. We have lost the colonies. Anyway, Americans now have to choose who they'd rather have in charge, a former Secretary of State who can never seem to remember which email account she's logged into, or a man who believes everything he reads on the internet. Whatever happens, I think it's safe to say that it was a pleasure knowing you all. Let's take a moment to grab some tins and we'll reconvene in the bunker.
And then the team that wins gets a big cup. It's electrifying stuff.
I wish they actually just got a big cup, like those ones you get from Sports Direct when you walk. What I love about this is, I think I like it. I mean, I love this story. And I'm not a Leicester fan at all, but their main player is this guy called Vardy, who looks like he's only ever eaten crisps.
Unrelatedly, this is the story of unfancied Leicester City shocking the world of football by winning the Premier League. Football fans the world over were delighted by the plucky underdog story of 11 millionaires fighting their way past a lot of slightly richer millionaires. Leicester players have achieved the one thing they have been striving for their entire lives, and one must assume that now, like bumblebees, they will simply die. No, it's a lovely story, and I only wish Leicester's most famous resident, Richard III, could have lived to see it. Grotesquely aged, baffled by the world around him, and sitting in an executive box screaming, "Why won't you let me die?" in Middle English. It's not just sporting achievement in Leicester, of course. The University of Leicester was instrumental in the invention of genetic fingerprinting.
A pilot caught on camera attacking a policewoman has been charged with assault and creating disturbance. The prosecution objected to the pilot's release on bail, saying he's a flight risk.
Are you a man aged over 40? Windsor Lions Club is offering free prostate cancer checks with the help of a local estate agent.
Shut your stupid funnel up!
Flippity-flap, flappity-flap. May we come in so we'll be dry?
Radio 3 staff have accused Classic FM of being put together by a computer, as opposed to all the BBC stations, which are put together by exhausted, talented people struggling under the weight of their impossibly bloated and yet apparently necessary management. Recently, Radio 3 introduced a Classic FM-style phone-in, causing listeners to complain of dumbing down and insist they go back to the old request process of liveried heralds barging into the studio, proclaiming their liege's will to a constantly jumpy Katie Durham.
BJ?
Classically, this is the doom-laden warning of one-man argument for a Bolshevik uprising David Cameron, who said this week that leaving the EU might mean the Calais refugee camp would cross the Channel to Dover. And if you thought migrants looked miserable in Calais, just wait till they've tried the breakfast in the Dover Wetherspoons. In fact, Cameron has been accused of resorting to fear-mongering by none other than straight-talking man of the people and public school-educated former commodities broker Nigel Farage. Surely, when you're being accused of using fear tactics about immigrants by the leader of UKIP, you may have stumbled just 1 or 2 yards away from the centre ground. Leave campaigners pointed out that the current border wasn't an EU agreement, it was a deal between Britain and France, two countries that have an unblemished record of honouring their undertakings to each other. Ever since the famous "Can we have a word with that Joan of Arc? We promise we won't burn her" agreement of 1431.
Little fishy in the sea, please swim up and talk to me. My wife has pushed me out the door to come and ask for something more.
Non-consensually, this is about Jeremy Hunt, who has decided to impose a new contract on junior doctors after negotiations with the BMA broke down. Because that's what you do when negotiations fail. You just do whatever you were going to do in the first place. Basically, if this was a siege, this is the point where Jeremy Hunt stops asking for a helicopter and starts shooting all of the hostages. Proving the old saying that one man's terrorist is another man's health secretary. The BMA have suggested that further strikes could extend to emergency care, causing concern particularly to the elderly, the parents of young children, and anyone taking part in the Channel 4 series The Jump. The strike caused widespread disruption. At least 2,884 non-urgent operations had been cancelled, and Saturday's episode of Casualty was just Charlie Fairhead playing the Rizzler game with a cleaner. Unnecessarily, this is the story of a wallaby that escaped from its owner's garden after a fence was blown down by Storm Imogen. The RSPCA were called to assist with the rescue of what was described as a privately owned wallaby, because if the Conservatives have taught us anything, it's that these things simply cannot be left in state hands. After watching recent attempts in Skegness to rescue beached whales, residents spent hours frantically attempting to coax the wallaby back into the sea. A rescue attempt which proved disastrously successful. Tragicomically, this is the news that Bristol City Council plan to introduce new rules to their parks, banning people from removing the whole or any part of any plant, shrub or tree. It's been suggested that this could criminalise blackberry pickers. Shocking news that has caused reverberations, if not around the world, then at least as far as Taunton. Thank God this sort of thing has not been passed in Devon, where picking a dandelion and blowing on it is still the only reliable way locals have of telling the time. Currying little favour with one side of the West Country against the other.
Vinyasa Flow Yoga Masterclass. A class for all levels. It will build up your core temperature and work all your muscles. Flow Yoga allows you to connect with your inner child. Please note the class is not suitable for pregnant women.
Yuck! huffed Thomas. That's the stinkiest cheese I have ever smelt.
And with that, goodbye.